Hello, English learners, and welcome back to the channel Practice Your English. And today, we are diving into a topic that is literally always relevant, the weather. But we're not just going to talk about today's forecast, we're going intermediate, B1 style. We're learning how to compare and contrast the weather, talk about our favorite and least favorite seasons, and sound much more natural doing it. Grab your notebooks and let's make some linguistic sunshine. Ready? Let's go.
First of all, here are some words you might need to know. Drought, a long period of time when there is little or no rain. For example, the prolonged drought damaged the crops. Heat wave, a long period of unusually hot weather. For example, we stayed indoors during the recent heat wave. Mild, gentle, not harsh or extreme. For example, this year the winter has been surprisingly mild. Downpour, a heavy, continuous fall of rain. For example, we got caught in a sudden downpour. Breeze, a gentle wind. For example, a cool breeze came off the ocean.
We can use some intensifying adjectives which help make comparisons stronger. Miserable, very unhappy or unpleasant. For example, it's a miserable gray day today. Scorching, extremely hot. For example, yesterday was scorching. Today is only warm. Chilly, unpleasantly cold. For example, it's chilly outside. Grab a jacket. And gloomy, dark and depressing, usually cloudy. For example, the sky is so gloomy this afternoon. For B1, we need to master 3 key comparison structures. The first one is comparative adjectives. With short adjectives, which have only one syllable, we add "er" at the end of the word, and then use "than" to compare. For example, the summer in Spain is hotter than the summer in the UK. But with longer adjectives, which have 2 and more than 2 syllables, we have the pattern more plus long adjective plus than. For example, the autumn here is more colorful than I expected. We can also add much or a little to make the sentence stronger or to emphasize. For example, summer is much warmer than spring, or this week is a little colder than last week. The second one is superlative adjectives, which use to compare one thing to the whole group. With short adjectives, which have only one syllable, we add est at the end. And don't forget the prior the adjectives. For example, July is usually the hottest month of the year. Or, which season is the coldest where you live? For long adjectives, which have 2 and more than 2 syllables, we have the pattern the most plus adject. For example, spring is the most pleasant season in this city. Or the monsoon season is the most challenging time for travel. And the last one, to say 2 things are the same, we use the pattern of equality as plus adjective plus as. For example, the temperature today is as high as it was yesterday. If 2 things are different, we use the pattern of inequality, not as, plus adjective, plus as. For example, winter in the south is not as harsh as it is in the north. Now it's time for practice. You will hear the conversation between 2 colleagues, Mia and Tom, talking in the office. Please listen carefully to see how they compare the weather and the seasons in their location.
Wow, it's only Tuesday, but I feel exhausted already. It's so humid today. I wish I was somewhere cooler.
I agree. This week is definitely more difficult than last week. The air quality is not as good as it was on Monday. I've heard this summer might be as bad as the one 5 years ago.
Oh, that was the year of the drought, right? That was terrible. It was the driest summer on record.
Exactly. And yet, this office is less hot than my apartment is right now. My air conditioning isn't working as efficiently as yours.
That's awful. I prefer to think about autumn. October is usually the most pleasant time of year here, especially compared to the gloomy winters we used to have.
Winters are much milder than they were a decade ago, don't you think? We rarely get heavy snow now. Remember that sudden downpour we had last week?
How could I forget? It was worse than any rain I saw last year. But overall, I think this climate is better than the one back home.
Really? I thought my hometown had the least amount of rainfall, but apparently yours is even drier than mine.
It is. The hottest day here is as scorching as the hottest day in my country, but we have fewer storms.
Well, as long as this heat doesn't last for an entire month, I'll manage. I think dealing with a little heat is easier than facing a 3-day blizzard.
Totally. Anyway, I think I'll stick to talking about the weather, as the workload is not as pleasant as this conversation.
Fantastic job, everyone! You now have all the tools to talk about the weather and seasons like a true intermediate speaker. Through this lesson, we learned words like drought, heat wave, scorching, and chilly. We mastered the than, more than structure for comparing two seasons. We mastered the the most, for picking a favorite or least favorite season. And we learned how to use as to talk about equality. Now it's your homework. In the comments below, tell me, what is the worst weather you have ever experienced? And how does it compare to the weather right now? Use at least one comparative and one superlative. If you enjoyed this B1 lesson, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. See you next time, and may your weather be mild.